So I wanted to ask you, you see, because I'm going to pretend he's not going to be my client someday. I feel that people who are in development, like Godrej Properties, that they emphasize financials. Things like floor space index, they want to get the maximum. Obviously land is expensive, so you want to get the maximum saleable area. You want to look at EMI's ability to pay of your clients then. You want to cut building costs to save money on construction. So profit perhaps becomes the end of the equation. So that's one side of it, but he's also a designer. I must also tell you another secret of his. He has a design studio in his office. So if you're designing for him, he's got all these designers secretly working and competing with you so that he has alternative designs and they can tell you how stupid you are to do this. So he has this lovely studio, but the studio is beautiful now. So in the studio, they look at things like community, neighborhoods, public domains, environment, sustainability, all the goody-goody things. And on the other hand, they're looking at all the bad boy things like making profits. So maybe I'll ask Anubhav to just talk a little about that, more to educate us. How do you navigate between these things?
Sure. We are a corporate company, but we are a design-led company. And in trying to bridge that gap, we started a design studio. And it's not only Godrej Properties, there are amazing studios and there's amazing pockets of innovation that are happening in our consumer products, in our other businesses as well. Now, with any business, you have to be able to make money. And for any designer, I think, to put it simply, you have to be able to do the right thing, right? And we built the studio to bridge that gap. We said we were designers with a business hat on. And like I said, it does get schizophrenic. For us, while cost, FSI optimization, EMI, all of those things are part of the business. We look at those as opportunities for innovation. So let me give you an example. If we're looking at a project in Pune, say in a particular micro market, our research will tell us that, look, you'll be able to sell this project for this much money. And typically you reverse calculate from there on how much money you want to spend on design, how much money you want to spend on product development. Now, normally you would just kind of stick with that plan and move forward. We try and challenge the status quo. So we say, well, what would it take to do the right thing in the first place? Try and bring those two worlds together. If they're far apart, it's a problem. If they're not that far apart, we take a leap of faith. So we make a business case where we will always say, for the incremental 1 rupee you spend, you may get 5 rupees back in terms of profit. So it helps, I think, for us, in our case, it helps if designers are good at math, because the moment you say design or designers, I think we suffer from a reputation in the room that these guys are sort of either airy-fairy or either going to talk about making things more expensive, and it's not necessarily the case. So to answer your question, I think we see those as opportunities. We have successfully been able to build cases, and the best part of this is, in the studio format, we work with a lot of other creative firms, whether it's the likes of Pelly, we work with you, we work with a whole bunch of small architects, small talented shops who may or may not even make the RFP for a large developer. And we're able to bring those things together and hopefully value both for business as well as for our customers, and in the process have some fun doing it.
Okay, that sounds good. I thought I would ask you, what do you find difficult working with good designers? I mean, if you had to work with somebody like Sudhir Sharma, I mean, he's a good designer, what would you find difficult about it?
So, you know, we found in our experience, it's earlier when we set up the studio, we thought it would be an either-or condition. Firstly, designers might think that we're cramping their style. Just be the client and sign the check, right? But we found pleasantly that we were literally completing each other's sentences. So there's a common language of design which we use. I think it's a hard question because I'm a designer myself. I think one of the things working with good designers tends to be that we, and I include myself in it, tend to get married to an idea quite quickly in a process of iterative design. Now, when I wear my schizophrenic hat on the business side, I find that the value chain is quite complex. So there are a lot of parameters that we need to address. So while you may be the best designer, you might come up with the best design solution. Oftentimes, it's a trade-off. So I think when folks get married to a design early on and are not very open-minded to iteration, I think it lands us all into some level of difficulty. And I think we need to be open source today, where we collaborate, we are open to ideas. If somebody's on the table who can bring the idea to the next level or make it better, I think that's how.
That sounds great. How do you do this? You know? You've got an architect who's doing, I think, pretty good designs, but then you have conflicts amongst the rest of the team. So how do you coordinate good designers with bad landscape designers, for example? You don't have bad landscape designers. I know that's your answer.
I think I think it's about setting up the framework. So in our experience, we spend a lot of time bringing on the right partners for the right job. Now, yes, it is subjective because as the client, we make those choices. But all of us have worked on the design side before. So we are quite aware of typically what kind of conflicts arise. Now, if you set up these engagements right and you set it up from day one in a collaborative setting, you know, it's kind of like, as an urban designer, we were taught in graduate school, right? If you made good guidelines, even bad architects would produce decent buildings. So this is akin to that. If you set up the framework right, if by luck you had a terrible designer, and again that is subjective, so it's a hard one to catch, hopefully the framework should be able to filter it out. And we found that oftentimes whenever that's happened, whenever there's a clash, and for good reason, I think we've been able to mediate it in a particular setup. And like I said, you know, to your previous question, sometimes designers have big egos, and again, it makes them very rigid. So if somebody else is trying to put forth an idea, I think it does need time of day to be able to filter it out. And if the framework's right, I think the right ideas will move forward for the right value.
And I think one of the key factors is why your system works is because you're there, Namrata's there, you have people who are hands-on, looking at every project. The same thing Abhishek does, he looks at every project, he's hands-on. But I know other companies where it's a bureaucracy. I mean, there's some big name development companies we've talked to, and the guys dealing with the designers don't have a clue about what's going on in the design world. So I think keeping a good team like you have, having a studio, keeping your fingers in the pie, so to speak, it's very important. So I appreciate that. What do you think is the most dangerous thing about your work? I mean, what do you think can make you really go wrong? Is there something that every week, every day, you're starting to see higher management maybe telling you you've got to optimize profits more? You know, don't tell us about you broke even in this project because you had some ethics and you wanted sustainable community-based architecture. Do you face that at all? That you have to deal with higher management?
Yes, we do. And like I said, it's managing the schizophrenia, which is probably the most difficult. Because, you know, if you're sort of a design thinker, you are able to empathize also, or you should be able to empathize also with business. Now, the trouble is that